All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Welcome, everyone. Thank you for joining Unity Connected Solutions and the sixth in our series of senior living webinars. Today's topic is on access control, and I actually have someone new with us, James Edwards, Regional Manager with Amano McGann, and as always, Amanda Miller-Lau, who's our Senior Living Specialist at Unity. And between them, they have experience working with several hundred senior living facilities across Canada, both public and private, and large organisation as well as single-site facilities. As this topic is a little different from the previous webinars, we're going to start by setting the context and getting an understanding of just why access control is important. Perhaps, James, you could kick us off on this topic.
Great, Paul. Thanks very much, and thank you for inviting me here today. You know, the three reasons why you typically use access control is, number one, to protect your people and your access and reduce the amount of risk and injury that is possible within an organization. You use it to increase your efficiency because you reduce the need for manual monitoring, and you reduce the costs by implementing a solution that's almost self-monitoring.
Okay, so thanks for that, James. Amanda, perhaps we can just drill down a little bit deeper and talk about what is access control all about in terms of senior living facilities particularly.
So access control is, you may think of doors or cameras, sort of security, I guess, to make your residents safe. And they can be from a fob at your front door to cameras outside or inside. They can be gates on a parking. It can be a variety of different things throughout the facility, depending on what type of home that you are. There's different needs for different access control, whether you're IL or whether you're LTC.
Thanks. So if we were to look at the first of those topics that we talked about, which was safety, risk, and injury, let's drill down a little bit into that and talk about it again in terms of specifics from a senior living facility. Who would like to take that? Amanda, James?
Sure, I don't mind. You know, preventing access and control the areas. You don't want people going into a kitchen and getting hurt by putting their hand on a stove or going into a pool area and falling into a pool when there's no supervision. Access control limits the ability for those people to do that. It can limit it based on schedules, and it will allow them not to go into areas or allow them based on their authority. And it can also keep people in. So you don't want them to leave in a memory care facility, and you want to make sure that they stay there without wandering around. So there's a lot of different reasons for putting this in, and the reason for it to reduce the risk of you losing somebody or injury happening when they're not in areas that they're not supposed to be in.
Thanks. And then the second area that we talked about in terms of one of the benefits of access control was in the notion of staff efficiency. So how does that actually work, Amanda? What is it that can improve staff efficiency?
So the nurses and PSWs, as well as other people in the building, have a lot to do, and their main priority is to take care of the residents. So we want to increase the efficiency where we can. So it could be that the access control at certain times of day or night, certain doors are locked, so a person can't get out. So if somebody knows somebody's gone out, the nurse can help in that way. But it's after something has happened that the nurse has to react. Somebody's not standing near the door and making sure. Or it could be that the door is locked after a certain period of time and somebody needs to come in. They can open a door remotely and not have to run to the front door and let that person in.
So it's fair to say that today, most of the organizations that we visited, they're relying on people, on staff, on manual. The process is a manual process.
Correct.
And I guess that's open to the fact that, you know, as with all things, that they could be distracted by some care issue and not be fully looking at who's coming in, or it could take time even for them to get to the door because they're busy with something. So there can be other issues.
There's always lots of factors. So if we can take that away from them and have it done automatically, it makes them more efficient and focus on the residents that they're there to care for.
Which is the prime reason, right?
Right.
And then the last of those items was cost reduction, James. And I'm saying that in a sort of a cautious term because a lot of people, when we talk to them, see this as just an additional cost, and yet truly there are ways to reduce costs using more integrated automated access control systems.
Absolutely. I mentioned earlier that the system is self-monitoring. So with our graphic interface, you can actually see if there's a breach in the system. Our doors are monitored so they can see if they have been opened with an authorized access, or if somebody tries to get out of a door and was able to actually open the door, the system will alert you. One, it can alert you with an audible alarm, and secondly, it could alert you with an email or a text message saying specifically what door has been breached. And that allows for you to specifically go there. So we talk about the reducing cost. First of all, you don't have to monitor the systems. You don't have to do a continuous search of the entire area. The system will always be on and watching your property for you. And that allows, as Amanda said, for staff to really look at what their core competencies are and take the time to do their care for the residents.
So we reduce staff time, which is a huge cost.
Right.
And also we don't necessarily have to add additional staff because they're taking on the burden and responsibility of becoming not just care, but the security organization as well.
Right. And, when you reduce cost by, first you think that implementing a manual key system might be easy. However,
and less expensive up front.
Yes, much less expensive up front. But in the long run, if you were having to re-key because you lose a master key, it would start to cost quite a bit of money in order to do that. With us, you're able to just eliminate a key if it's lost, a card or an identity fob, and you can go on just adding one more fob, and it wouldn't break the integrity of the entire system. So you can reduce the amount of time and effort that you have to put into replacing, one fob versus an entire key set.
So essentially, if you end up having to rekey or to even, modify the keyways in locks, it's basically like putting in a whole new sort of, door locks, right?
Yeah.
So it's almost like duplicating, or if it happens again, triplicating. But over time, we're seeing a substantial cost, right?
Right.
And what about the notion that not only is it the fact that you're doing that, but some of the places try to sort of do an end run by saying, well, we'll just create more master keys. And we've had some organizations where they've done that.
Right. It's almost the same as putting a manual keypad on a door. There's one code, and by the end of it, the entire town knows that entire code. So you're still breaching, your integrity of the system. So, keys are exactly the same way. You start producing multiple keys, and you never know where they've ended up.
Right. And in fact, we've had some people that run these organizations have expressed concern over the fact that at some point you just don't know anymore.
Well, you have staff members that leave, they take the keys with you.
Right. Get lost.
Right.
So
not the best solution.
No.
So again, a bit abstract up to now because we keep talking about doors and access control and cameras. So what are all the elements that you might actually have in an access control system? And let's talk about it from perhaps terms that a layperson could use, because there's a lot of technical terms that get thrown around, so it can get confusing.
Right. So first of all, we need to access the entire system. So we need to program it, and that comes from a controller. And that's actually the software that allows you to program the scheduling of the doors, the number of people, what type of access groups they are, and then you put the reader on every door, and if it's one that you want to be controlled from both sides of the doors, you typically would use a mechanical mag lock, and if it's one that you want to have free egress from one side, you would use a strike. and those are just mechanisms to lock the doors.
So essentially, you know, we're talking about servers and software, so it can be upgraded and updated. It's not electromechanical. It's not some combination of hardware that's part and parcel of the solution. So that makes it a much more flexible system than old systems of the past, right?
Right, because you can always change those schedules. It's all programming. It's not just a mechanical feature that needs to be replaced.
And it takes up a lot less footprint in these buildings. We've got some buildings that have these older door control systems, and there's just walls and walls and walls of boxes that are set up. It's about probably a single server on a rack somewhere.
Exactly, exactly. And it could be from a head office perspective and be able to manage multiple sites. And if you think about it, you know, the readers could be not only a fob or a card or an identity card. It could be actually your finger. It could be your hand, or even in some cases retina scans.
So it goes beyond the mechanical devices like fobs and stuff. It's into, you know, something that we haven't got to worry about people losing like their finger. Right?
Exactly. Or, you know, and if you don't want to have that credential that you have to carry all the time, your fingers are just part of your body. So.
And so, on top of the doors, video can also be part of that, a part of a single solution, not a separate activity, right?
And with our system, the video surveillance is actually integrated. So when we talk about monitoring doors, and if there is where somebody's trying to get access into an area that they don't have authority into, or somebody opens a door by mistake, the video cameras can actually give you a backup and see exactly what's going on in that area. So again, when we look about cost reduction, we don't have to go there. We can actually see it, and we know exactly what's happening in that area. We can take the recommended approach to whatever is happening specifically in that area.
Okay, thanks. So there's some capabilities. You know, when we look at these systems, there are some people might say, well, that's the hardware, that's the elements of it. So, but there are some features, if you want to use that term, that we might want to call out. A few of them that might be of particular interest to this particular community.
And you know, it can go from anywhere, from a single door to up to, you know, unlimited number. And it could be not only one site; it could be multiple sites. And inside those buildings, you want to do a lot of different things. We've talked about, you know, doors for access into kitchens, into specific areas like memory care. We also can limit the number of people that go into a specific parking area, so we can gate it and make sure that people only have access to that specific area. But at the same time, we also do elevator control. And elevator control is where you don't want people to get onto an elevator when they're in the memory care area. And you want to limit access to specific floors based on if that's where you're living.
So there's some granular control over these things. In the past, it was either restricting entry into the elevator or not. We can be very granular in terms of where that can be controlled. Yeah, and even the notion of, I mean, it says on this chart here, 3,000 plus doors. Most people say, I don't have that many doors if they're thinking in terms of the kitchen and so on, but some facilities are looking at putting these onto the actual individual resident doors as well, so they don't have to, I guess, be concerned about losing keys and stuff too.
Right, and you can program the same fob for the front door as well as the resident door, wherever they're able to go in the building. So that can be per resident as well as the staff.
So that gives you even greater control then across the board.
Mm-hmm.
Correct. And also you can do specific doors as well, like James talked about memory care, but there's sometimes unique situations where you have visitors that come into the building and they're teaching a class and you want them to have the ability to be in that room or be outside a certain door for a couple hours at a time. So you can give them a key code or a fob that will only last for a certain period of time. And
like a guest pass, but except for it's a fob or a key code. Okay, yes. Cool.
So we can help with unique situations and unique rooms and specific homes that are required. We can think outside the box, I guess, utilizing the system that you already invested in.
So it's pretty flexible. I guess that's the bottom line. Is that a lot of organizations, every organization we talk to have different needs.
Correct.
There's a lot of common themes, but there are some different needs, and so they can be. We've often run into challenges with different systems in the past that weren't flexible. They didn't have this capability in actually meeting those requirements, right?
Correct. Yeah.
one of the last points I'll make on that is that we can also start to manage and control the HVAC system. So if the director arrives and fobs into the building for the first time, it could actually turn on the lights in her office or his office and put the temperature to a specific temperature if it's individually controlled. And it would go to whatever degree they like to work in.
So that could actually improve cost controls as well too. We
Exactly.
didn't talk about that one earlier.
Yeah.
That's great. Thanks. So this chart I'm just putting up now, which is actually very specific to Marno McGann, which is the company you present. We've talked about these things in generic terms, but in this case, we're sort of saying that I guess this chart says basically you have some way of working with just about any situation type of door that you need. You can work with almost any kind of door controller that's needed, etc. Is that right?
Yeah. So, when we talk about readers, we are able to retrofit from previous installations. So we can just put in our door controllers and program the system for it, so you can maintain your investment. Also, it allows we're able to provide from that all of the integrations that we need to. And our typical output is either Wiegand, and there is 26 to 44, which is getting very technical, but it's a very specific data integrity for security. So the way that we transmit the information is very safe.
Okay.
And but we are able to adapt to all of these different technologies. So if it's a different type of reader, we can read it. And that's part of the flexibility of our system. And maglocks and door strikes, if you look at how we actually secure those doors, it's dependent on how secure you want the doors. Maglocks are typically used in a facility when you want access to be denied for both or allowed for both sides of the door. So in the memory care, for example, we typically put maglocks because we want access to be recognized on who is going in and who is going out at all times. So it's kind of like a track record as well. So it's your reporting structure, and it's telling you who's been in that area and who's not been in the area, and to restrict that.
And that's one of the things that we didn't really get into, that we talked about at the very beginning, down to an individual level. So
Right.
you can actually track which individual person has gone out which specific door. I mean, it could be that, because there are cases sometimes where residents they're not in memory care, but their mental functions are starting to wane and they start to wander off the property. And that can be tracked, I guess, and seen by their access out of the building.
Yeah, it's very important. And when we talk about that liability and risk percentage, that's why the systems are put in place. And when we look at another, ability to manage all of the doors within the facility, even the residence doors, when we put in product like the Salus wireless door product, it will allow us to communicate wirelessly to every single door and be able to program it easily for all of the residents. So it's one credential wherever you go in the building, and it's giving you specific access to even their resident rooms.
So those are the ones that, when you talked just recently about facilities where the resident doors, that was actually a Salus wireless door.
Yes.
So it didn't require someone to have to go anywhere to the individual door to do any changes to them.
Correct. It's all communicated to wirelessly and programmed from one system.
Cool. I like that.
Mm.
So one of the things that we get a lot of questions on, and so this one isn't, we've drilled down a little bit here, but only because there's two areas that we get a lot of questions on. One of them is this notion of analog digital, and the next chart talks about cameras, which we'll get to. And one of the reasons being that a lot of people, the only way in the past of wiring doors and cameras was hardwiring them all the way back to some central place, which is a lot of wiring, which is very expensive, and it's all unique wiring, meaning it's not, in other words, it's not like, today when you put in a digital system, an IP system, where it's one Ethernet system across the whole building. We're talking about lots of unique wiring, home run wiring. In fact, it's not always a home run. It's it's a mess of wiring. So there's a cost, and then there's the ability to manage that, right?
Right. So for analog cameras, if they're an indoor camera, they would need power, they would need a coax cable, and they would need many different cables in order to do it. If it was outdoors, they would also, because of our weather and our environment, they would need heaters or blowers, and that would need powers as well. So today with power over Ethernet, it's made it much simpler, and the cameras are much more efficient and cost effective.
And even the doors, because because the doors, we talk about the locks of the doors. That's a wiring standard, but we put some kind of adapter in place near the doors so we can backhaul it over the same digital interface, right? So that's one of the reasons that you can integrate all this, I guess, is that it all can be backhauled over a...
Right. So over every door, we put a specific controller that holds the program for that door, so that if there's a break in the communications, the door will still open and still function no matter what, even if there is no communication to it from the main controller, which is great. And these are all IP devices, so you don't have to run a lot of cabling before you have to home run everything back to a single room. But now you can have it by door, and it really reduces the cost in terms of how you cable and how it manages each specific door. So yes, all of those just go to above the door, so you reduce the amount of cables that you need for everything.
So basically the same system that I run my data network on, that I run my video cameras on, is also running the door controller, so one single integrated system, right?
Exactly.
And then the other, so that's really, when people think about digital, they're really talking about IP-based systems, and that's the significant advantage over the analog systems. And then, like I said, the other question we get, it's a lot of people come to us, is they get confused over the cameras. I mean, there's a lot of specs and standards and choices. A lot of people say, oh, well, I'll just buy a cheap one then, because partly because they just don't understand what all those standards are. Maybe you could just pick a couple of things. We're not going to go through this list in detail because that's not the purpose of this webinar, but can you pick a couple of things out here just to sort of get across why the differences and variety in these things?
Right, so a couple of things. Number one, IP cameras, there are 3 different kinds that you would typically look at. Number one is a fixed that just takes a specific area and looks at it. Then there's a varifocal, which will allow you to manage what you want to focus in on. And then they have a PTZ, which is a pan tilt zoom. And that's one that actually can track movement throughout a facility, or specifically used outdoors, looking at parking lots and movement around those areas. Today, even more so the cameras, we look at analytics, because analytics can do a lot of things. It can people count, it can track people, it can look at movement, it can look at many different things and provide reporting on that. And cameras are taking on not only surveillance today, but many other reporting capabilities for facilities being used throughout all memory care and retirement living.
So what we did here is grouped into 6 buckets of category, right? To say that one of the reasons for the different variations was the fact that like, for example, indoor outdoor, if you're going to put a camera outdoors here in Canada anyway, in the winter, they're going to get frozen unless you have some kind of heater inside them, right? And if it's outside, you might also want to consider a camera that, and if it's needed to be actually really useful at night, then that could actually also have infrared capability, so it can also function well at night. So that might be a case of it's an outdoor day-night camera. That's why you would end up choosing this. I think that.
Correct.
Yeah.
And depending what you're looking at, so if you're putting in a certain direction that you want to see people going in and out of a certain door, then you can put a fixed camera and it'll cover those doors. But if you need, for example, in a parking lot, you want to see who's coming in or out with the license plate, there's specific cameras that will be for that as well.
Because they can zoom in on that particular,
yeah.
They can see it, like they can even track it if you wanted, right?
Right.
Yeah. So the point is that you might end up with a mix of cameras, because they're actually going to be chosen based on a very specific function they're going to perform. It's not just, oh, I need to buy 20 cameras and stick the same one in.
And that's often how it is, because there's unique locations in every home normally. It's not one size fits all, right? You need to look at each area specifically to make sure that you have the correct camera for for that location.
So it'd be fair to say that part of the process, if you're working with someone, is actually going through and looking at all those different locations as part of the design. It's not just a,
Yes.
we think we need 20 cameras.
No, we go and you have to make sure that if it's a long hallway that they want to look at, to make sure that we can get the whole part of the hallway. Or if it's in a lobby area, maybe it's a 360 camera that we need instead. So it still depends on the location.
And then hopefully that something that may put this into even more context than even all those other conversations, we've called it case studies. These are some I guess are also some unique implementations, but very common, that we found in senior living facilities beyond just the straight someone at the front door situation. So Amanda, maybe you could kick that off.
So memory care is generally a lockdown area. So you don't want the residents to be able to leave, and you don't want just anybody coming in. So you have it locked down. So we lock it down with magnetic locks that are at all the doors, whether it's a stairwell door or a main door going into it. And then we will put readers on there on both sides of the door. So if anybody wants to leave that area, they have to have the credentials to leave and or go in. So if you're a PSW or a nurse that works in that area, you can move freely about there. However, you don't want the residents to leave that area.
And you may not want other residents in the building to go in there either without being escorted in, right?
Correct. So going back to all the rules of everybody's fob, exactly. If I'm an independent living person, I'm not necessarily allowed to go into memory care. However, maybe I have a spouse in there and I do want to go in.
Right.
So we can set up rules.
Which is our point. So with these kind of systems, it can be very, very individual and unique, and doesn't require then anybody, the staff in general, to have to then be used as the traffic cops, if you want.
Correct. Regarding elevators, sometimes elevators go right into memory care. So you would have to have a reader in the elevator itself. Again, having the credentials, if it's on the second floor, then I'm allowed to go onto the second floor. If I'm a daughter of somebody who's living on that floor, I have to go to the front desk in order to get my credentials to go up to see my mother or father. On the floor itself, there'll also be a reader in order to call the elevator to that floor. Another thing that we've done in elevators outside of memory care is if there is a parking garage and you want somebody only to be able to go to the reception floor, you want everybody checked in. You don't like people wandering throughout your building. So if you have the elevator, it can stop at the first floor. We can make it stop at the first floor, so everybody has to check in with the concierge or the receptionist at the main floor before they can go up to visit their loved one.
And for parking, what we've been able to do is to provide, in areas where there is not only residents, where there might be businesses that are located there, retail environments, or medical facilities, they will have public parking. But you also want to restrict access to provide that parking that you want for residents. So we can put up a door or a gate that will restrict public from getting in, but providing with that same credential that they're getting into their room, into the different parts of the facility, they can get access into their own private parking area. So we're able to restrict access for cars and parking based on you having the credential to get into that second area.
So they don't need another parking pass, some kind of device to let them in and out. You're saying
Exactly.
So the same fob that would be used for all other doors in the building are used for the parking garage as well.
100%, and it's fully integrated into one solution, so you don't have to worry about having 6 different packages of software to do all of these different things. It's completely enveloped into one package.
Yeah, and one of the reasons I think we brought up parking is because there's both the access to it, and then there's actually the security in there as well in terms of cameras. We're getting a lot of new buildings are being constructed in, I should say, so I guess it's urban areas that they don't have parking nearby, so they have to build parking into their building, and that's becoming a challenge for them to manage and monitor, right?
Exactly.
So because this is a little different topic, I thought, that in the past we've had a summary which often talks about architecture was maybe a little too heavy anyway. Maybe we can try and summarize some of the benefits of, or advantages, I guess, of what access control, good access control can bring. And maybe I can just walk through this perhaps, and you can tell me whether I'm on the ball or not. But we're talking about prevention rather than reaction using technology. I think we talked about the fact that you can both, use analytics and other tools in there to try and prevent things from happening rather than saying afterwards, oh, somebody left the building, right?
Right.
We're talking about reduction of the staff time to be the traffic cops, to be the door monitors, to be the security people, right? Because we can, if you have individualized control using fobs, people are either going to be allowed access or not. And if there is someone at the front door that's not, you can even use video to help determine who that is before the person lets them in, right?
Exactly. And you reduce the manual effort that you have to make in terms of maintaining paper.
Okay, so that's another good point, right? One of the things that I'm always a believer of is that if you try to manage generically, it's a burden, but if you manage by exception, it's possible. So with this system, we can set up reasons that something looks like outside of the norm and to alert people, I guess.
Right. And we can definitely be able to set up, when it's an exception, to alert in many different ways, by audible alarm, by text, by email, and specifically to cases where it is an exception.
And then obviously we've got automate authentication. I mean, that's part of the basis of a good new, I guess, a current state-of-the-art access control is that's what it's all about, right?
That's the whole thing.
Yeah. And then, obviously we talked about the access from anywhere. So that one might want to jump into a little bit more because I'm not sure we touched on that enough, but that's a crucial thing, I think, especially either for multi-sites or just for a lot of the administrative staff are not always on site or not always around, right?
Exactly. And so with our product, it's because it's a centrally managed solution, you can get on it and manage the door access control and program from anywhere as long as you have access into the software. The great thing about this is that if you look at video and video surveillance, we have mobile apps that you can download off of the App Stores, iTunes, so that you can put it onto your phone. And if there is an incident, it'll immediately alert you on your phone, and you can go directly to that and look at what is happening, even if you're not on site.
So because it's an IP-based system, it's a software, it's state-of-the-art, you can, as long as you have internet access, I guess, at the site, you have full ability to both administer and to monitor.
Right. If there's an alarm or an alert, it'll allow you to go directly to the cameras and see exactly what's going on at that site.
And because it's also those that we talked about, we don't mention it here specifically, but the notion that if you had, say, 2, 3, 4 sites, you only need to put the software in for once,
one site, yeah.
And you can use it to manage and control all the sites. Right?
Exactly. So it's centralizing the database. It's allowing you to report on different parts of your business, understanding the environments per store, per site, and understanding, what the different number of people are that are on it.
So that helps amortize the cost a bit over the different sites,
exactly.
As opposed to today, they're all, whatever you put in is unique to every site.
Right.
And then finally, I guess the last point is the fact that it can be one seamless integrated solution. So all of your access and video control can be managed as one item, right?
From the sidewalk right to the resident door.
That's excellent. So with that, that's actually the last in our series of 6 webinars right now. That we will be starting a new webinar in the near future, probably in the fall, and delve into some new topics as we get more requests from customers as to things that they want to talk about. Even though this is the last in our series of webinars, all of the recordings from the 6 of them that we've done will be available on our site, and we will send that out to everybody as to where they can get access to it. Feel free to share that with your colleagues as you may need to, and look out for an email with an upcoming fall schedule for you to look at. In the meantime, a big thank you from the team here at Unity and Amana McGann, and we look forward to talking with you in the near future.